If everyone is here, I will call this Monday, November 10th, special meeting of the Knox County Commission to order. All three commissioners are present, and I will start, as we always do, with opening the floor to public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission? Sir.
May I?
Please.
Thanks. My name is William Doyle. I'm the National Correctional Employees Executive Director. I represent the correctional folks that work at the Knox County Jail. Notwithstanding my comments at last special meeting last week about how and why we got here, my comments today are more related to what you put forward as far as the administrative summary that formulated today's meeting. As I read through this summary, it appears to me that this board has already made a decision to already start the process to contract with Two Bridges. It's kind of mirrored in the gobbledygook that you read about in this, about all the good reasons to support going with Two Bridges. Right? It's already been set up nice and easy for you to just sign and agree to. Here's the deal. You have a bunch of corrections officers. At last week's meeting, Lieutenant Wallace got up here and said for the first time in 10 years, fully staffed. That has already been diminished by the inaction that got us here today. 4 people have already tendered their resignation because they're unsure of where they're going to go. It's the holidays. They don't know how they're going to pay for things beyond that. So 4 people have already gone. The other thing is you have a contract. You guys may not have signed it, but your board signed that contract with the NCU for Knox County Jail. You didn't sign a contract for them to work at Two Bridges Regional Jail. There's a lot of questions that come with that. If your employees go down to Two Bridges Jail, whose operating systems are they following? Are they following the policies and procedures of Two Bridges? Are they following the policies and procedures that you put in place or the sheriff put in place at the Knox County Jail? Right? We've already heard last week about the district attorney's office concern about shuttling people down to Two Bridges. How are their families going to go? Right? Or keeping them here in an institution that's been transformed into a 72-hour holding facility, but we may or may not know what the staffing level looks like for that. So how are they going to adequately take care of the inmates that she's going to put there as far as charging people? Right? You've heard all this, so I'm not going to belabor the point. The point is you have a contract with the correctional officers that are here today. Right? If you want to keep them and don't decimate Knox County Jail because you have a budget issue. You have a budget issue. You have ways to get beyond the budget issue. You are the commissioners. You can go through the legislative process. You can operate on an interim budget. Interim's a pretty interesting word, right? Commissioner Glazer, you said it last week. Interim doesn't just mean your last year's budget, or else they would have done what they've done in other contracts. They would have put in there you operate on the previous year's budget. You've seen that in a lot of contracts that you do, I'm sure. Right, so if they intended that an interim budget was the previous year's budget, they would have put that in there, not interim. Interim means that it's a time period, right? So you could operate under the previous year's budget and operate the Knox County Jail here until you run out of money. Right? And that may take 6-7 months to give you the ability to do whatever you have to do legislatively, or to fill it the way you did it before the Charter Commission change of 2002. Right? The way that it was done prior to that, you guys would put people on the Budget Committee would do their thing. Right? We talked about this, it's in the literature out there. In the absence of the Charter Commission that failed to identify how you elect people to the board, you resort to state law, right? And what you've done in the past. So when you look at this, again, You got to look at it from all angles. But more importantly, this Two Bridges thing, it's a tough pill for folks to swallow. Do you think that people that live around here are going to drive 45 minutes down to Two Bridges to go work? No, they're going to get jobs at the state prison, or they're going to get jobs in other places. The folks that you're leaving behind, again, we don't have a setup for what that looks like. We don't know if it's going to be 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, because the county has failed to sit down with the union and negotiate anything. So really, this, to us, looks like union busting. Right? You're taking a union shop and consolidating it with a non-union shop. So, again, we're asking you to look at all the aspects, because the correctional officers, remember, they're not just correctional officers. They're first responders. There's a fire at the jail, it's not the fire department that's responded first, it's correctional officers. When inmates are fighting, it's not the police that's responding first, it's the correctional officers. When anything happens in the jail or on the grounds, they're responding first. They are the first responders. So again, when I talk about decimating services, if you partner with Two Bridges, you're going to take cops off the street that now have to drive inmates to or from, maybe not to the 72-hour hold, because maybe there's not enough beds, especially if you only have 2 corrections officers working in there. More specifically, if you wanted to, I could sit there and talk about the importance of what facility safety looks like. I don't want to get into the nitty and gritty about facility safety in the public atmosphere. Happy to talk about that with you, in non-public session, because those are pretty important matters if you're only going to have 2 or 3 people working at the facility. So again, don't decimate what you have here. You have good services for the constituency of Knox County. Keep them that way. Work through the budget issues. You can do both. Right? We can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. We're pretty advanced. So, again, take care of your employees, or you'll never get them back. Lieutenant Wallace said it last week. You'll never get back the people that you're losing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Barry. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? Please come right up.
We have over 28 COs.
Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm APO Thompson. We have over 28 COs who have 4 more paychecks till the end of the year, if we make it that far. Christmas is coming. Thanksgiving's coming. And you guys say that you're about the employees. It seems like a slap in the face.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Please.
Don Wallace, Lieutenant Wallace. I'm not in uniform today because I'm not here. I'm here as a taxpayer in the county of Knox. I did a little research. You guys brought up the county charter issue back in April with the quorum with the budget committee at a meeting. So why was that can kicked down the road till it became a problem? Why weren't we looking for solutions back in April? Commissioner Glazer, you were on the special committee as the chair for the charter review back in 2023. So you're a subject matter expert in the charter. You should know that charter inside and out. Yet here we are with 30 plus employees, multiple departments getting ready to make cuts because you didn't do your due diligence as a chair. So I'm really questioning your ability to chair any boards.
Anyone else? One more chance. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Thank you. We'll move on to the rest of the agenda, which includes discussion items. And the first discussion item is talking about the 2026 budget process resolution. Would you be willing to fill us in on where we stand?
Yes. Give me 1 second. So when we met last, we presented a few legal opinions to you all. You asked me to go back to our legal counsel and find one that the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State would support, which we got for you late last week, hence this kind of last minute meeting today. I'll just read through the summary of those findings. So the county's legal review concludes that the Budget Committee currently lacks the quorum required under the charter and therefore cannot legally transact business. Whether the 5 unfilled seats are considered vacant or unelected, the effect is the same. The only 4 sitting members remain short of the mandated 5-member quorum mandated by Article 5. The opinion cites relevant precedents from the justices and the Maine Attorney General, both which confirm that a governing or advisory body cannot lawfully meet or transact business without the quorum. Accordingly, any action by the 4-member budget committee, including soliciting nominations, appointing new members, or recommending a budget at all, would have no legal validation. Council also warns that even with multiple layers of administrative process, that would not safeguard the budget or protect the county from a legal challenge moving forward. The opinion also strongly cautions against proceeding under the assumption that subsequent legislative action could later serve to cure defective processes. Basically saying don't do anything until you have some sort of legislative action. Instead, Council emphasizes that legislative action is at the outset is the only approach that ensures the county's budget process is legally valid and defensible. They recommend securing legislative authorization prior to any further budget committee activity to either allow you all to fill the seats or to allow our charter to act without a quorum or some sort of hybrid of the two. The opinion notes that the Secretary of State and Attorney General's Office have expressed willingness to assist in advancing legislative action provided our own Knox County legislative delegation introduces it. So that is the final legal opinion from our in-house counsel with the support of the Attorney General's Office and the Secretary of State, both are which now waiting for our legislative action if you choose to move in that direction.
Questions for the county administrator or discussion?
Have we spoken to any of the legislatures yet?
Not yet. We wanted to see how today's discussion goes before contacting anybody.
Okay.
We have all of their names, numbers, and talking points ready to go after this meeting, if that is how you all want to proceed, though.
So we have no idea how they feel about the legislation at this point?
They were made aware early on, right when we identified this situation. They were all contacted and made aware of our challenge. So they assume something is coming, but this would be the follow-up contact to that.
Okay.
Any questions?
I don't think I have any questions about this part now.
But this implies that we can't do anything in terms of a future budget until after we get some form of legislative, which my understanding means that we might be able to get an emergency legislation somewhere in January and work through that process, which might mean, if we're very optimistic, we could have a budget committee seated in March or something like that,
No.
and start working on a new budget then.
Yes.
But till then, we have to use a interim budget.
Yes.
There's still a little leeway in what that means. I believe we need to contact, say, the state auditor's office and find out what that means in terms of an interim budget. But the wording of the charter as well as state law is that the interim budget can't be any more than last year's budget. Which is fortunate in Knox County, because in some counties, if you read that stuff that I gave you, the interim budget can't be any more than 80% of the previous year's budget, which would really be a kick.
Second question. The legislature is not full-time. Do we know when they're in session?
Our hope is that, so some of our more local legislators, one of them or two of them maybe have served on our budget committee. One of them has been a commissioner for Knox County.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to get this in, to let them kind of lead this fight for us, if you will. I don't know the exact date, but it's in January when these would be submitted.
So they are in session in January,
Yes.
making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that leadership is already meeting, figuring out what bills are going to be carried over from the last session, but I don't believe that they start service in January. And then the next one is budgetary impacts on departments.
Do we need to take any action on the first piece, on the process resolution?
The goal today in this meeting is for, yes, you three, or as many as possible, to collectively decide that if this final legal opinion is our path forward, it doesn't need to be a formal vote, but some direction so that we can get to work would be ideal. Doesn't have to happen right this second, but before the meeting ends, that would be great.
Let's wait till the second part of this
Yeah.
and then discuss it as a package.
Yeah.
I'll make the observation that we have clear legal guidance as to what route to take. We can totally ignore it based on some of the other legal opinions we've taken or heard, and just throw all caution to the wind and do something entirely different. We have that authority.
Yes.
Part 2.
Okay.
Which is the impact on departments.
Yes. Okay. So I don't have, this is really, again, your discussion today, your direction. I'll give you my notes that I have, which you also have in front of you. Hang on, let me find them. There we go. Obviously, operating on a 2025 budget leaves some diligent work for us to do as leaders within the county. We don't know what that looks like for funding our various departments without having the same tax assessment or valuations. We don't know how to operate with previous revenues or grants or undesignated. So those are some of the things we're going to have to work through diligently as a leadership team. My plan is not to single any department out, but to work together collaboratively. Because a lot of these bigger ticket items, if you will, do affect a lot of our employees, so that does need to be a collective decision. This is going to force us to look at our contracts, our projects, and our needs across the county for an interim period of time. Obviously, our main priority will be employees and those staffing levels, but we are definitely uncertain about what those details look like, right? So if we have some sort of resolution today, we can get diligently working on what that looks like and give answers to our employees and department managers. The most impacted department, as we probably all know, is going to be corrections, because that department does stand alone as far as the budget. It does have its own cap set by state statute. 5.6 million is the number we have from last year as our operating budget in corrections. We were projecting about 6.9 million to be able to operate this year, just to kind of share the differences there. Anything specific to operations, we don't know what that looks like across departments, but those are kind of the bigger picture things we're looking at as far as the impacted departments.
Questions? Thoughts? Well, there is no, not yet. This is your opportunity at this point to try to figure out what the impacts on the budget are going to be.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out, it sounds like we will be operating potentially on the interim budget for at least the first quarter. And within that first quarter, is there flexibility to use more of the money that we have, knowing that hopefully by the second quarter we will have a new budget, so that perhaps things could fully operate in that first quarter despite, the constraints of an interim budget, but flexibility within that interim budget. Is that clear?
Yeah. No, and I think, internally we've discussed that. We don't want to be reckless with our spending, so we would try and pause as many bigger ticket items, pause any contracts, any major purchases until we have something set in stone. But there is that wiggle room as long as we are very transparent and track those changes that we may make, especially if, depending on how closely legislature works with us, if we feel like it's going in one direction or if we feel like that will help us make those decisions as well.
Sure.
From what I understand, we'll probably provide a lot of the information. They'll take it up to their corner of the world and work on it, and we will not hear until it's done. So we'll tread lightly, but I think that's the plan, is to try not to take away as much as we can in the hopes that we will have a budget process and a 2026 budget after that first quarter. Again, treading very lightly and transparently, but yes, that is a slight
Possibly
option.
an
Yes,
option.
that we have.
Okay, and I just want to point out that when it is in the hands of the legislature, we still have a voice there. So I want everyone to know that we don't just sit back and let them do their work. We show up and we testify and we do whatever we need to do to make sure that legislation passes. So I think that that's an active role that we all can play in moving that forward. Okay, I think I'll pause there and see if my colleagues have questions.
We've known this is coming for a bit now, and we're aware, obviously, people here because of the problem of corrections. Have any of the other departments expressed real problems with what's possibly going to happen for the time that we have to use the restricted budget?
I think all of our public safety departments are a little bit concerned. Some of our departments sit siloed, if you will, in their budget, so there's even less room to move things around as opposed to our general departments, which can share some money. But I think it's really going to come down to public safety and what that looks like. We'll do everything we can to provide as much of it as we can and what people expect in this community. Anything we can't provide, obviously, we will be sharing, working with our partners, working with our municipalities as much as possible. I don't think there's anything glaring set in stone, but I do know, it costs a lot of money to run the dispatch center. It costs a lot of money to run our patrol division, which includes, our detectives and civil process. So, after we kind of hear some sort of resolution today, we can go back to the table, figure out those final numbers, and then come up with our best path forward, I guess, for you all when it comes to operations and services. But to Commissioner Hines' point, there is that ability to have, in the hopes that the 2026 budget would be processed after the first quarter. Do we need to take such a hit in the first 3 months, or can we anticipate a little bit of that, coming through? So again, walking that fine line.
And that's a fine line for a number of reasons. One is we don't know that the legislation will pass. We assume it will. And once we have a budget process, even if we have our full budget committee, we don't know that they will pass the budget that we want them to for 2026. They may say, oh no, we like the fact that it hasn't gone up at all. And so we don't want to build ourselves into a hole down the road where we all of a sudden say, oh, wait a second, we spent all our money in the first half of the year, now we have nothing for the rest of the year.
Right.
So we really have to be very careful when we do that. That wiggle room is there, but it's got to be used judiciously, as they say.
Yeah.
We do have the sheriff here if anybody wants to ask how he thinks this will affect his department in terms of public safety. Would you be willing to give us a quick synopsis?
Afternoon. So a lot of the similar things I was going to speak on have already been spoken about. I think the big piece in particular, so to go to the law enforcement functions first. The big challenge there is going to be the fact that there is going to be less available service, meaning that we're going to have to prioritize more. We're not going to be able to move forward with many of the equipment and replacement items that we had talked about. Kicking those cans down the road could then lead to other unintended consequences, but not nearly as much of an impact as when looking at corrections in particular. One of the things that was not talked about today so far is we still have a corrections cap. The number was not mentioned. The state of Maine says we cannot spend more than $5.8 million this year coming on our corrections budget.
Can I interrupt for a second? Can you explain background of the cap so that everybody, maybe just me needs to know more about it? And the other thing I'm curious about, it appears that we've heard is that the budget for corrections went up higher than just about anything else. And I'm curious why that is.
So, back up to the first question is the cap. So, you won't remember, but there used to be a thing called the Board of Corrections that came about and thought, it was the state basically ran all the jails in the state. They quickly learned that they wanted to run prisons, not jails, and gave the jails back to the counties. When they did that, they set a cap on every jail saying they can't spend more than X amount of money per year, and that's how we got to a cap. I think when they originally made that law, it was around $3.8 or $4 million, and you can only increase what's called the growth factor every year thereafter. So that growth factor to this point, for this coming year of 26, has increased that number to around $5.8 million. Unfortunately, for the last 2 years prior to this year, we have needed more money than the cap allowed. Fortunately, the Budget Committee and the Commission both voted to go over that cap both years in a row. The challenge is that it's technically a law violation because you're over the cap. As one colleague of mine has said, that there is no cap police. That may be true, but the cap police are our Budget Committee and our citizens. If they don't want to pay too much, they'll let us know.
Are other counties having the same problem with the cap?
Yes.
So this is...
The most egregious is probably Penobscot County. They've come up with some elaborate ways to solve the problem, but I think they're somewhere in the area of $3 or $4 million over their budget every year. So.
And have people gone to the commission or whoever it is that makes the decision on the cap to discuss that it's not working?
No, that has not been brought up. So the counties themselves have figured out ways to solve the problem working with the state auditors. So how I believe Penobscot does it is they have a higher general fund, and they just use the general fund to offset the difference. One thing that's not talked about here is we have no funds after the all of our undesignated will be spent.
Sorry, can you repeat? I missed it.
All of our undesignated at the end of this year will be spent. So we have no cushion, if you will, going into this next year. So that is a challenge as well. But for me, I'm the negative type. I look at all the worst scenarios it could be. The worst scenario for us is that we could be in this interim budget through some time into 27 potentially. If we cannot fix the charter, the next election cycle is not for 2 years, and that is a long time to work with, at least for corrections, $5.6 million, based off of the interpretation so far. That's still $200,000 less than what our cap would be. So a challenge at best to figure out how to better serve our corrections communities. As the executive branch, I'm responsible for the operations, but I don't decide the money. To your point, Commissioner Hind, I could run everything as is. When I run out of money, I run out of money, but then what are we going to do? We have no more money, we have no contingency. I hope that people will help us. I'm not much of the hoping type. I like to have the bird in the hand versus the two in the bush. So it is uncomfortable to have to go down this road. But even if we were to unfortunately decimate our other departments, we still would not be able to come up with a $1.3 million difference for correction to keep it running as is.
A quick question I'd like to ask the gentleman from the union. You're aware of cap problems around the state. Has your union done anything to work with that problem?
It's a great question, Commissioner. In fact, the NCU was the only union at the legislature last year advocating for the bill to increase the cap status. And as a result of our advocacy, and others as well, including I think it was the first time that the County Commissioners Association, the County Managers Association, the Police Chiefs Association, it seemed like we were all on the same page, which at the legislature seems to never happen. So, but we were there, and we were able to ask the legislature, and they were able to approve $4 million in this year and $4 million in the second biennium budget year. But it's only for that budget year. Well, they do a study that should be released this coming January that talks about what the state should be subsidizing the county jails, because in the grand scheme of things, one legislator said, they're all state prisoners, eventually. They're just holding in a county facility for that year until they go up to the state. So there hasn't been a reval look at each individual county and what they should get in a long time. And so that's what they are doing and in the process of now. So I think you were able to get some additional funding out of the $4 million in this coming year. You should have been able to get some money out of that.
If I can just answer your question partly, that bill was not about raising the cap. That bill was about the state subsidizing county prisons. There is some movement amongst the county administration and county commissioners about submitting a bill in this coming legislature about raising the caps. It has to be done, as far as I understand the ordinances or the state law, individually by each county asking for it. They can all get together and say, we would like this, but it's done by state law for each county. That cap is set individually for each county. But it hasn't been done, and it might be done next year.
So the money that Mr. Doyle was just speaking on, so it's the state has flat funded jail funding for the last 4-ish years at $20 million. So we receive about $500,000 of that here at Knox. The $4 million he's talking about, we asked for 2 years in a row. They only granted us one. Is for MAT only, or services around MAT, medical assisted treatment. We're receiving approximately $110,000 of that $4 million. So not a lot for Knox in comparison to the amount.
So it's over 600,000.
So between the two, it's 600. But like I said, the $4 million in particular was for the MAT only. We have $500,000 for operational costs.
And just to follow up a little bit, in terms of what the difference last year's budget funding will mean for the sheriff's patrol, how does that affect what the sheriff's patrol will be?
Yeah, so most likely it's going to be a reduction in vehicles and equipment replacement. There are other things we are looking at. We may have to put our entire Marine program on hold. Just to save from spending those things, we'll have to, obviously cut into no training unless mandatory, those types of things. Don't see that we're going to necessarily need to lay anybody off from that department in particular, but again, we're not quite sure where we're all going to end up with the budget. There's many more departments than just these two.
You would have a union contract that calls for a certain increase in salaries and benefits and stuff. How do you deal with that?
So we would still give those, and that's part of these things that we would not replace in the coming years. It's to offset that cost increase.
Any other questions for the sheriff?
Yes. So what's happening with the budget committee and the 2026 budget feels like it is one issue And then what's happening with the jail feels
Can we
like.
cover the jail as part of the next
Oh, I'm
segment?
sorry, I thought
Yeah.
that was, yeah.
I
gotcha.
just wanted to cover the implications for
For the
this part of the
budget, I
budget.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Anything else on just the regular parts of the budget? Okay.
I don't think I'd get up and leave the chair, but,
I need the exercise.
yeah.
Do you want me to stay for the next thing?
And so, I guess if we're going to follow up a little bit more on the budget, the question is, how do we think we should proceed? I mean, I'll give my sentiment, which is we have to work within last year with whatever wiggle room we can find by checking down what the state auditor has to say, coming up with a budget that is doable as much as we possibly can without laying anybody off, respecting our contracts that we have, and trying to figure it out and how to work within that. I know that Kathy's already been working on that, as have all the departments. But I think that's the direction we have to go. I would like us to continue to meet with the departments as those budgets get fleshed out, and continue to have public budget meetings about what that is going to mean for all the departments so that we can see it. And I do think that when we come up with an interim budget, the commission should vote on it so that we take some responsibility for what is happening to the county. And just handing it over to the department heads and saying, oh, no, they're the ones who did that, ignores the fact that we have the fiscal responsibility for the county. So I would like to see us at some point vote on whatever budget.
I would agree to that.
It may only be in an advisory capacity, but I think we should also do that. That's my sentiment. What do you guys think?
I would agree to that. The buck stops on these desks.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the other thing that you didn't mention was the legislative portion of this that we need to, obviously, we have to pursue. And I think, we've been given these two options of allow the commission to fill the unelected seats through 2028 or permit the budget committee to operate without a quorum until 2028. Personally, I'm in favor of the first, that we get permission to fill the unelected seats. I think we need full representation from all of the towns and communities in our county, and that would be my version of this that I think we should move forward. I don't know how you feel about the legislation aspect of this.
I wouldn't want the committee to operate with less than a full number. But I think we can also achieve that by getting rid of the quorum and saying that 4 members of the commission are enough to appoint members to their own commission. Because we have people who want to serve. Either way is perfectly fine. Whether we want to take on that responsibility or keep it with the budget committee, they just don't need to have 5 members. They could do it with 4 members.
Right. I just think that leaves us underrepresented by communities in the county.
No, they would appoint, there are already another 5 people who want to serve.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to find a mechanism to get them on the committee. And if those 4 people who are currently serving can now appoint those people themselves, and then if we approve those.
Yes, I think that's the first bullet.
The one thing I would add is that as long as the people have been agreed upon by the particular towns they're representing, that needs to be
Yes.
a part of it. So somebody just can't say, let's put these people in. We need to have the representation of the towns before people can be voted on.
It sounds like we were all talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about some version of
Yeah.
the same thing.
Okay.
And I think it's a matter of sitting down with our legislators and seeing what they all come up with together. And they may pass something back and forth and say, oh, we like this way of doing it. And I think as long as it pulls people in and as long as it represents the districts, we're all happy with it.
Yes, I think as long as we're clear on which elements are most important to us that are included.
And getting that done as soon as possible.
Yes, I think the representation and the expediency are kind of the two main points.
One other thing, I think, the county administrator is prepared to contact legislatures, but if we have contacts as well, we should move forward ourselves in all haste to make sure that they hear from the elected representatives about what the situation is.
Yeah, we can split up our list of legislators to our districts
Yeah.
and contact them each individually if you want. There, is that enough direction?
Yes, thank you.
Next is an action item, which is an act to allow the county administrator to execute an agreement with Two Bridges Regional Jail. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. I think I will, if you don't mind, lead the discussion to start off with and explain some of how we got here. A lot of people know that the state is broken up into different districts. We are prosecutorially in the 6th district, which is Knox, Lincoln, Saginaw, and Waldo County. As part of that, we have created a few years ago what was known as the District 6 Jail Collaborative. And they've been meeting for years now. Some of what they've been doing has been working together, getting different inmates to different jails based on their needs. In some cases, even exchanging people who work for one jail, filling in part-time at other jails. So we have been working collaboratively with Two Bridges Jail and with Waldo County for a number of years. This is not something new, and one of the things we've been trying to do is try to figure out how we lower the costs for all of the jails and provide better service to our inmates. One way or the other, we are responsible for the people who are in our care, and we have, in that responsibility, we have to do the best job we possibly can. And some of that has been working with this collaborative. We have been talking through a number of consultants how to better incorporate the 4 counties together. Unfortunately, at the moment, it looks like only 3 of the counties are the ones that really want to work together, and which leaves Knox with Lincoln, Saginaw. So it's Knox and Two Bridges Regional Jail. The Two Bridges Regional Jail has a whole different it's a newer jail, it has a whole different footprint, and because of that, it winds up costing less per inmate to keep people there. There's 2 things that are happening right now. We are the commission, and we are both responsible for finance as well as policy. On a policy level, it might have been a few more years if we could work towards it to somehow or another let the Knox County Jail go and house more of our inmates at Two Bridges, because I think from the list of services they provide and how well they do, it's a better jail product than we've been able to produce in Knox County. And that has nothing to do with the people that work there. It's really almost a matter of the physical plant. So we've been trying to figure out how to do that for a while. The problem is our finances right now. If you looked at the budget that we submitted or was submitted to us in the beginning before we discovered the county problem with the number of people in the budget committee, the budget was going to go up 20%, due almost entirely to the jail. Now, we all know that our share of any individual's budget is a fairly small, the county's bite is a fairly small, but to go up 20% on any budget when people are fighting to stay in their homes is something we really can't do. It's unsustainable. If it was going to be 20% this year and 20% next year, at some point we start just milking everybody dry. We can't do that. We have a responsibility to the citizens to keep that from happening. So our hand is being forced by the fact that what we're looking at is last year's budget. And we can't run our jail. It's an untenable situation. We can't run our jail on what we paid last year. It just won't happen. There's new restrictions, new laws, new costs of contracts. The medically assisted treatment goes up. We can't do it. So we are basically being asked to fund the jail in a new way, and the new way really is something that we've been working on for a while, and we probably would have gotten there eventually anyhow. The problem is this creates a certain amount of hardship for our employees, and we have to work around that. We don't know all the operational problems this creates. Things like that have been talked about are transportation. We already have a transportation corps that's taking people back and forth from our jail to Two Bridges. What we need to do is find a way to make that a little more seamless and more efficient, which does mean keeping on some of the people that already work with us. We would then turn our current jail into a holding facility that meets state law for what a holding facility is. Local police departments, as well as the sheriff's department, could bring people there where they are, there'll be an intake officer of some sort or another before they get shipped out, before they go to court. Whatever we have to do, it gets done there. And then we work from there with whatever transportation needs to be. I think, from my standpoint, the biggest drawback to all of this is inmates and their families. I would like to see us incorporate into this, whether it's right now or further down the road, some form of transportation officer for families that helps coordinate how we get people back and forth, or whether there's a technological solution to better Zoom calls where people can get to it. I think that's just one of our responsibilities that we have to address down the road. But what we're looking at with this act, I was hoping, and it may happen down the road a little further, we may ask the sheriff about this, and I believe Colonel Bailey is here. This that we're looking at signing right now is basically a boarding agreement. I would love to see us move closer to being a full member of the Two Bridges Jail Authority, which would give us a little more say in how things are run, and have more civilian input down the road. But at the moment, this is what's on the table, and I think that's all I have to say. Anybody have questions or discussion? Yes, and if you need to bring the sheriff, the county administrator, or Colonel Bailey, or anybody else to the table, you're certainly welcome to.
I would love the sheriff to start and then Colonel Bailey at some point. My first question is I know we've heard that this is a better operation and a better situation for our inmates, but I can't ignore the people that have been our employees that take care of these people for a long time. So my first question is and we know this has been coming. This is coming at the same time as we're having the budget problem, but it's really a separate problem, and it would have come up regardless, I believe. One of my questions is, why has the corrections budget become such a big problem this year? It was up 20%, and as we've asked other departments this year to look at 25 and see what they can do, what would happen if we asked corrections to make changes so that we did keep the jail? Just I'm just hypothetical devil's advocate here.
So, the first thing I'll answer is I don't see that the situation is any better. Corrections is corrections, no matter where you're at. This all comes down to cost. One of the challenges for us in particular is it is on average $100,000 per day or per year for each bed we have as a cost to us, compared to the national average of $60,000 per year per bed. Why that is, the simple answer is the design of our facility. We are a hybrid facility that was designed in the late 80s, early 90s, that kind of blended linear style and pod style together. I think it was an experiment. I wasn't there when it was created, but it is a very staff-dependent facility. That is one of the major driving costs, other than the service costs. The other costs beyond our personnel for security are medications, mental health, medical visits. There are a lot of standards that the state of Maine issues to jails and how they have to operate. There is no real national thing. There are a lot of associations that put out best guidance, but there is no real thing out there that says jails must do all these things unless your state tells you to, and that's what has happened here in Maine. When Board of Corrections was dissolved, the Commissioner of Corrections was given the authority to basically be the administrative oversight of all jails, and they issue standards every year. I think we're up to almost 300 of them that are mandatory, which include a lot of things that most of our citizens in the community don't receive. And those are driving a lot of the costs that we're having to pay for, especially, like was mentioned, the flat funding by the state. Here's the same amount of money, but we're going to give you more standards that you do have to follow. And the only place we as a county, which a lot of people don't understand, is our only revenue source is property tax. And we don't get sales tax, we don't get any other thing to offset our costs. So.
Is this a problem? We're fortunate to have a situation where we could work with Two Bridges, a more modern facility, which cuts the costs, I believe. That's one of the reasons it's not as expensive to keep prisoners there, and it's a more modern situation. I'm trying to get a feel of the whole state, and is this a problem everywhere? And we're fortunate enough to have a way out of it. Is this happening in a lot of the other counties as well? Their jails are also going under the same problem, the same increases in.
So every jail is seeing the same drivers of increase, correct? I mean, even DOC is seeing the exact same drivers of their costs. I mean, they have I think it's $250 million budget for the entire Department of Corrections. We've received $20 million of that, maybe all 16 counties. Each county is different. Our neighbors to the northeast are dealing with some financial issues. Some of our western partners are dealing with population issues. Some of our southern partners aren't. They're in a similar boat as Two Bridges, where they've got plenty of beds and no incarcerated folks to put in them. So every sheriff is looking at this operationally very differently. I don't know if you saw the news articles a few weeks ago, but Oxford, Oxford, Franklin, and Androscoggin are looking at a very similar problem right now. Piscataquis, very rural, they're looking at, trying to upgrade their facility. They're sitting in something that was probably built in the 1950s. The physical plant really is the problem for most. Places that did do more modern facilities, such as Somerset County, similar thing. They got plenty of space, not necessarily any clientele from their county only. My opinion, based off of looking at all of this, is I think we're going to see our jails maybe head towards a model similar to the school districts and what they did to regionalize.
Okay. Because we have a situation, it's mentioned here, that because our facility is so old, it would cost up to $100 million to replace it. And
yes, if we went to bond right now, probably about $75 million.
As Commissioner Glazier mentioned, our responsibility is both to the employees, but also to the citizens in Knox County. And to try and we're in a situation where most of the towns and municipalities have just had increases in their property tax and their valuation, and people are hurting very badly. So we're sort of between a rock and a hard place right now. I guess my further questions are, if we go ahead and do this, how are we going to take care of our people that work for us now? Your notes here say that if about 41 people that work there, 17 would be kept within our corrections, so that we're on a 72-hour facility. So that would put 24 people at risk. And questions I have, and this may be for county administrator as well, and for finances, how are we going to take care of those people? I know that county administrator may want to talk about some of the things we're thinking about for them, and then I have some more questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, really it's going to come down to impact bargaining. All those decisions will be made when we're at the table with the union. We have some ideas to make this as painless as possible. I know we have a bunch of policies we're going to try and bring forward to you, how we handle layoffs, if they're going to stay working with the county, hire back policies for anybody that may get laid off that has a first right of refusal, if that's how you say that, for any future job opening for the next year or two or what have you. So we're trying to have some backup plans. We have some ideas. We have a lot laid out in the contract with our bargaining agreement. But it really will come down to when we're sitting at that table and figuring out and hearing from the actual employees of what they need and taking into consideration our financial situation and what we're able to provide. So we're trying to get
Coming from business world where I work in situations where layoffs occur because of situations, there are usually situations where, depending on how many years you've served, you get so many weeks of salary for each year as a layoff package and medical improvement, stuff like that. Is that part of the agreement we have with the union? Do we have those kind of conditions?
No.
Or how is that something we will look carefully, or?
We will look carefully, but again, consider our financial situation where we have no undesignated funds and we cannot spend a penny more than what we can. So we're going to look at what positions are impacted. We're going to look at the number of positions impacted, see what we can do, make sure it's fair and equitable, given that we don't have a lot to offer at this point. So again, we're trying to lean back on some policies, on some just ways we can take care of outside of that, right? It's not off the table, right? We could find a pocket of money somewhere that could be useful, but that's something we're still kind of brainstorming, if you will.
Again, rock and a hard place. I'm trying to make it, if we have to go forward with this, I'd like to find a way to make it as equitable for the people that have served us so well for so long. And I'd like to be creative in how we do that, so that it's not just, gee, thanks, it's been a great 15 years or whatever, and then go out there in the tough world and try and survive. We owe them more than that. So,
I agree.
be involved more than that. I guess that's my questions for right now.
I actually have some questions for Colonel Bailey, if you want. And you don't have to go away just yet, but I'm sure we'll have more questions for you. Thank you for being here today, Colonel Bailey. I appreciate it. One of my questions is, the sheriff was talking about how other communities are thinking about this, and you are part of a consortium that has already been through this, correct? So I'd just be interested to hear from your perspective of having been through this process once before with Lincoln and Saginaw counties, what the challenges were, what you learned from the process, just any high-level things that the community might benefit from hearing about from your experience.
Sure. So I think one of the biggest challenges is change, right? Even when Lincoln and Saginaw built 2 bridges, and a little history of mine, I've been there since the beginning. It was a big change. Saginaw County had no facility at all. Lincoln County had an outdated, very small facility, but it was our facility. And going into a much bigger, very much more modern facility, probably put a lot of fear in people, including community members, because it was changes in policies and how things were going to work, and programming, although better programming, it still is a change. So one thing we learned very early in our process is education of the community. Even as far as, I've heard conversations over family members and friends being able to have access and visitation. In some ways, when we did our project, it was a little easier for Saginaw County because they were shipping people all over the state. But still, our jail sits in Lincoln County, a little distance for the further, southern Saginaw County individuals. So we looked at technology as well as opening up our visit schedules for them and access for them. But really, the education of the community was biggest on what good that we were going to be able to do by the change that we were making.
Thanks for sharing that. I wonder also about your experience since you were there from the very beginning of the new facility. How did you experience the difference between the old facility and the new facility, and how does that compare to our current Knox County's facility and what our incarcerated folks would be experiencing?
Sure. So I actually started my career in our capital in Augusta, a very older linear style facility, and then I transferred to Lincoln County, very small linear style facility. So when we started the jail project, I was actually hired as part of the transition team. The bigger facility, the direct supervision concept, which is a big pod with more inmates and with staff, one staff member, very scary for me. I was fortunate enough to go to Colorado to the National Institute of Corrections and learn direct supervision and became an instructor in direct supervision. Really opened my eyes to, there's a lot more people in this housing area, but it's safer than what I was doing before. I'm able to identify issues at a much lower level and take care of them. And I actually just was at your facility last week and did another tour. I think similar things. In a linear style and an older style jail, you go into an issue not knowing really what it is and how big it is. And in the direct supervision facility, you're there, you're dealing with the day-to-day little issues before they become great big fires.
That's helpful, and it makes me wonder, it seems like this is the facility of now and the future. So there are not going to be linear style jails built in the future, I'm assuming.
So I'm not an architect or an expert, but I would guess not,
Yeah.
just because of the efficiencies that direct supervision creates.
So it seems like there's looking for a silver lining here, right? I know it's not what everyone wants, but the silver lining potentially could be if we did have Knox County staff move over to 2 bridges, that they would be learning new skills and have skills that would be useful in a number of different facilities, not just in Maine, but around the country. So it would kind of build out their resume a little bit more. Just talking about the training that you did in Colorado, and I just, maybe some folks in our facility already have that training, I'm not sure, but it just sounds like a
So
potential skill.
the academy actually teaches it now.
Okay.
The Corrections Academy.
Okay.
But I would agree. I think that they will take all the knowledge and experience that they currently have, bring it to our facility and expand, and only expand on more. The core of the job of a corrections officer is just at the core of the job. different style that I have for a facility only allows for expansions of that porch. And if you don't mind, I would gladly maybe help answer a question that you had to the
I have another
sheriff.
question, sure.
So with this agreement, and the chair had mentioned on furtherance, and I can tell you my board is very interested in a partnership, in continuing a partnership. And with this agreement, we would actually expand our staff at Two Bridges, and I would offer lateral transfers for any interested Knox County employee to come to the facility.
And my question here, in the note that our sheriff wrote, says, offers direct hire with little or no process requirements to provide comparable service credit for pay and benefits. So people could use a lateral, if they're a lieutenant, they would be coming in at the same pay and benefits.
So
and
I can offer transfers for my current open positions, and I don't have supervisory positions currently open.
Okay.
But I've done studies with the sheriff and Captain Wood. Our pay and benefits package as a whole are very comparable, whereas our pay might be a little less, our benefits are worth a little bit more type scenario. And I would honor, we have a similar pay grade and step system as Knox County has, and I would honor their current step location.
So their seniority would be awarded equivalent, maybe not
On my pay scale.
Yeah, the pay scale.
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
may not be able to get the same position because it's not open, but they would at least make as equivalent as possible.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, because that's important.
And I would work with your county for a very smooth transition. And the hiring process, that is correct, I will be waiving the entire hiring process. If they're a current full-time Knox County employee, the only process will be an application for my file, and they will be able to transfer.
One question, it was brought up that one of the speakers said that, we're obviously coming to the holidays, they have 4 paychecks left, and for the year, when would this all happen? When would this take place?
That's up to you guys. If it happens and when it happens, it's up to you guys. This has all been created to give you the information so you can make a decision.
When it would be best for it to happen? We have to go on your expertise.
So January 1st, based off of current housing at Two Bridges, would be the earliest that they would be able to take us into the full agreement. But if contingency options are needed, we could probably make something work in the interim. But the hope is that we don't have to do anything contingency.
The act that's on the table, I think, uses January 1st as the time. Even at best, though, I mean, the reality is you couldn't take all of our officers, corrections staff, if we switched over. You can only take some. And that gets back to why we still need to have some kind of a process and a policy for how we deal with people who may lose their jobs.
That is correct, Commissioner. The last numbers that I just heard is that we would not have openings for all of them, but a fair amount of them.
The number that's in the notes here is, it appears that we would move from a complement of 41 to approximately 17 for 72 of our whole, which would leave 24 people.
And I would have approximately 13 to 14 positions open.
Then if we're going to make a move, we really need to be creative in how we treat people that
I have a question for the sheriff. The remaining 17 that folks said we would need to have stay on for the holding facility, that's the number, correct? Of
That
staff.
is the best number I can come up with given the preliminary interim budget number you gave me.
Okay.
If there were to be more, that could potentially be more staff that we could keep here.
Okay, and those are all union members, the 17?
Majority, yes.
Majority union members, okay. I have another question, but it's escaping me, so any questions? And then back
I
to
don't
me.
really have any other questions. So if you have questions, this is not inappropriate to ask them, or to discuss in general. I will make that statement once again that the problem here is exacerbated by the budget. It would have been nice to have more time to work through a lot of these operational details as to exactly how many people we would keep on. I see this as part of an evolving step to where we're going to be, maybe when we have another budget or maybe next year's budget. But there's going to be growing pains in all of this. Nobody's going to suffer here nearly as much as the employees wind up suffering. Even the ones that get hired on are going to have a big change. It's not going to be easy for anybody. And if the implication was that I think the people who work for us weren't doing as good a job as Two Bridges, that's not what I meant at all. It was just the nature of the facility lends itself to a different kind of service than we've been able to provide. By all accounts that I've heard from people who visited the jail and who've used the jail, we have the most exemplary staff in the state, which is why if you take care of people, you'll be improving your staff. But it still sits there that, as you said, it's a big change.
And I would echo your words about your staff. Many of them have come to my facility over the last couple of years and worked, and I would have nothing but great things to say about them.
Mr. Doyle.
Commissioners, thank you. I know you don't have to allow me the opportunity to speak, so I want to first thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, if I'd known
that. But with that, I would just like to point out a couple of things. What you're doing here is you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges. In the sense of, I heard Colonel Bailey just speak, Saginaw didn't have a jail. Lincoln did. So it was easy for collaborative efforts in that sense. What you're talking about here is incorporating a jail you already have, employees you already have. And again, I go back to what you're doing right here is union busting. You're negotiating right here on the open public about taking unionized employees and putting them in a non-union shop, right? So de facto bargaining is an unfair labor practice just in and of itself that's going on right here, right now. Just forewarning you that that's coming. In addition to, you're talking about employees are going to go down to Two Bridges. You don't know that. Nobody can forecast that, right? Because I can't tell you if it's a 12-hour shift and you want me to drive 45 minutes each way after a 12-hour shift or before. No way. Yeah, through Wisconsin, right? Through Route 1. It just ain't happening. Right? So what's going to happen is you're going to send a lot of inmates down to Two Bridges. There's no guarantees officers are going to get down there when they can go to the facility right down the street, the Maine State Prison. Right? That, again, MSP, Maine State Prison, is also down several positions where they can get longevity increases, where they can get some of the same benefits that Colonel Bailey is talking about with you folks about giving people. And that's why I say it's de facto bargaining. He's telling you, which is getting out to all the members and people about what they're going to be offered if they go down to Two Bridges. So again, you're not comparing apples to apples. And again, you're talking about 10 to 11 possible layoffs with 13 or 14 positions potentially being absorbed, because nobody can guarantee that those folks are going to take positions down at Two Bridges. Right? They can go to Waldo, they can go to Maine State Prison, they might be able to go to Summer. I don't know how long it takes to get everywhere. But there's several options. And none of them say they have to go to Two Bridges. And again, this is simply taking, you're taking
yourself
union
in the foot.
positions.
Bill, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're saying that there are plenty of other jobs for these people.
That's correct.
And you're losing great staff.
Yeah.
That will never come back.
Okay, I have a question for you. I understand you're representing your people extremely well,
Thank
and I
you.
understand what you're saying. The situation we have is we don't have the finances to continue the jail as it operates now. We literally don't have the funds. It's not like the district attorney said when she was here, well, just, take my opinion and come up with the money. We don't have the funds. Do you have a solution for us for how we deal with the funds?
Yeah, you can operate on your internal budget and do whatever you have to do to see the county budget committee and get a budget approved. And then once you have an approved budget, you can make decisions based on what you do have for money. Right now, you're basing decisions only on an interim budget because you don't know what you don't know, and that's.
But wait a minute, but we've already heard that we're $2 million over the cap, is that correct?
1.3.
$1.3 million over the cap. And one of my problems, and one of the reasons I asked the questions I did earlier, is I don't think there's been, proper representation and proper work done at the legislature or wherever or whatever committees to make sure that we don't run into these situations. That's where we got put in a rock and a hard place, which wasn't our fault because the state has not done the job they should have done and hasn't been properly guided in what they need to do a proper job in doing this. It's like I find that there's a real problem with people waiting until we have a problem instead of looking forward to getting it done. We're in a situation because proper work wasn't done in the past. It's not your fault. It's not our fault. It's the way the state operates obviously is a major problem now, and that needs to be addressed. I don't know. We can't just pull money out of a hat because it wasn't properly dealt with previously.
I don't disagree with you in that the legislative fix needs to happen, but that's not something that can happen today. What can happen today is you guys decide to make sure that your employees stay here and your jail stays open until you have the ability to get some of these questions answered and some of these different problems sorted out. Not bargaining in bad faith without the union with a non-union party to absorb your unionized personnel.
I understand that. We also have a problem where we have an outdated facility that's in needs of $100 million fixed, and can we ask the people of the county to absorb that much money when there's a better alternative for the inmates that we need to have? It's such a big problem, and it's easy to come up with small solutions, but there are a lot bigger problems here than any of us can solve at this moment. And it's unfortunate we have to make the best, worst decision.
And I understand, by all accounts, you're saying that this is a better alternative. It's not, right? They tried jail consolidation in 2008. That was the whole reason that got us into the Bureau of Jails fiscal situation in the first place. Jail consolidation doesn't work. If they did, majority of the county jails would be in some sort of collaborative position. The only one is Two Bridges, and that's because, again, Saginaw did not have a jail. Lincoln did, and they formed this multi-jurisdictional authority. You're in a different situation, and the majority of the counties in this state are also in that different situation. And they have their own jails, and they're all facing the same camp issues that you are. But they've gone out and they've said to the community, here's what it costs to operate. And yes, we need new schools, we also need new jails. Are you willing to fund it? And then the community does this awesome thing of going to the vote, and then they decide whether you can or you can't. I mean, that's the process.
We've started to see in some of the votes that the community's not funding it because they can't afford the changes that people want to make. And you've seen that with the schools. And if the schools can't get votes, I'm worried about asking them for money for corrections. When we have a situation, it may be the ideal situation, but it sure, our experts, and I'm not an expert at this, our experts seem to think that it is a workable situation, and maybe we can ask some of your people have worked at Two Bridges. How do they feel about the system there?
It's a workable situation because they're not the ones that have to do it, right? You're listening to the experts. They don't have to go and work the different facilities, right? Colonel Bailey's not going to be coming up and operating the Knox County Jail. Sheriff Pokey, I can guarantee it, isn't going down and working at Two Bridges Jail, right? These folks, these are the ones. They came up. They talked to you. They're telling you. Sean is a constituent of yours that's telling you this is not good. This is not, I can't remember the word you used, excuse me. So your constituency is here telling you this is not the right way to go. And they're the ones that worked it. They're the ones that lived it.
I'm not a union member.
Administrative. So he's not a
You have a
union.
hand up.
Certainly. And I can tell you that I've worked direct supervision pods. I got a lot of buddies who work around the United States in correctional facilities. There's a lot of advantages, but there's a lot of disadvantages to direct supervision. You ask a lot of the staff at Knox County Jail who has been to Two Bridges, and I will tell you that they don't like direct supervision. They don't feel safe. They don't like it. I spent a lot of time in pods with 90 people, and it's dangerous. And you're setting yourself up in that type of setting, and I know that firsthand.
Yes?
Hi, I'm Officer Quinn. I've worked 18 years at San Quentin, and I've worked 10 years at MSP, and I've worked 4 years at BCF. I've worked 2 years now at Knox County, and I would never work a prison that didn't have a union. I like the linear style because it's safer. You work with other officers. Safety is really important for us, especially in this day and age. We have a lot of inmates who are addicted to not only drugs but alcohol. They come in, they're extremely sick. At Knox County, we take care of them before they go to Two Bridges. We clean up their urine, their throw up, their feces, and we get them better before they're transferred to another institution. We do a lot. We put our heart and soul into this. You're asking people who have little kids to commute another 45 minutes. That's taking from their family time. I'm 61. I should be retired, but I'm not. It won't affect me like it will affect the people around me since this has started. The officers are dropping off. They're sick. They can't work. They're already finding new jobs. They're going to leave the department completely, and they won't come back. It's nauseating. I'm sorry, but it's nauseating.
Thank you.
I would rather have my taxes go up for the county jail to keep the criminals off my back lawn than go up for the schools, especially nowadays. You can put my taxes up as high as you want. I don't want those criminals on my backyard.
I have another question for you, Sheriff. Have you done the modeling for what the increase would be per taxpayer in the towns if we did go over the cap? So like per taxpayer.
We've not done an actual thing. We were going to do that as part of the regular budget process this year. The Administrator and I had discussed that. I can give you what my personal tax bill would have increased. So to give us the budget that we had asked for, if we had a budget committee, Pat Polke himself would experience a $54 increase for the year to pay for all the services this county currently has.
For all of this, for all of
If
this.
we were not going, if we had
All
got a
of the
budget committee
services.
and passed the 20% increase, it would cost me $54 more for the year.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is across the towns. Like I said, we were going to work on that, but the spraying up is another issue, and that got taken. So.
And take a break for a second.
Okay. If there's no objection, we'll take about a 5-minute break. Am I ready? Sure, I guess so. Session. Okay, we're back. Were you asking another question?
I thought of a follow-up. It was my understanding that the preliminary budgeting that you had done had us originally more than $2 million over the cap. Was that correct?
Correct. We had approximately 7.3 million. We were able to reduce some services to get us to just under 7 million. It's like 6.98 or something like that.
Okay, and what services did you have to reduce to be able to get to that?
A lot of it was contractual. We looked again back at what is mandatory versus not. A lot of the non-mandatory items we ended up stripping out.
Okay, so is it fair to say that those are sort of like quality of life types of contracts, or the non-mandatory are these things that contribute to folks' well-being within the facility, or what kind of?
Correct. A lot of it was stuff around reintegration into community. A lot of those were handoff contracts, as we kind of called them. We ended up having to reduce some of those.
In Colonel Bailey, are those the types of, do you provide those types of programs at your facility that would have been cut here under a reduced contract? Just out of curiosity.
Without knowing all of them, yes, I believe I do. We provide reentry services. In fact, I'm looking to expand those reentry services. We provide, I think, very similar medical services and programming. Very much provide
Educational programming.
educational programming, substance use disorder. We have a very intensive medication-assisted treatment program at my facility, multi-levels of it, including a 5-day-a-week, 3 hours a day program, because the individuals go to programming 3 hours every day, 5 days a week. So yes, I believe religious services throughout the week and weekends.
And back to this question of safety for your COs. Do you have data on incidents at your facility? Any harm to your COs?
So I would dare say, don't quote me on it necessarily, I will
Did you hear
average
that, Steve?
one.
Don't quote him on this.
I will average 1 to 2 injuries to my staff as an inmate-related incident each year. Overall facility incidents, we are still a jail. We still hold people that society does not want in society for a reason. So we have incidents. We have we classify minor and major incidents, and I would say, no more than 1 major incident a month that my staff is responding to into the units. And we are direct supervision. Our pods are fairly large. I have one housing unit that can hold 64 individuals, and I have one that can hold 72 individuals for my 2 general population housing units. However, we only allow them out half of the time, so we lower the number of individuals out in our day rooms that the staff are dealing with.
So it's potentially 1 corrections officer to 30-ish?
30 to 32 inmates to 1 corrections officer, and we have rovers in the hallways that are in and out of the units as well.
Okay. How does that compare to safety issues currently at Knox County?
Yeah, so I'd say it's probably similar. Again, it's anecdotal. I didn't put those reports together specifically, but just knowing what we deal with, we probably have a similar 1 to 2 inmate on guard or staff incidents. So I don't see a difference there. The real difference for us is there's an officer in every pod, and there's at least a supervisor and a rover available. So we tend to have a higher complement of staffing available to respond to incidents.
Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Commissioner. Not that I want to correct anyone's record, but when you're a corrections officer like I was in a direct supervision facility, even if you have half the inmates come out, you're still responsible for the other half.
Sure.
You still have to go and do door checks, and you still have problems if you have to open that door while you're still monitoring the population. So even with 30 coming out or 40 coming out at a time, you're still responsible for the entire unit and all those inmates. And when something goes wrong, it can go very wrong very quickly. And I know that from firsthand experience. Because in the facility I worked at, which was direct supervision, we didn't have them out half of the time. So I was responsible for 50 to 75 inmates all out at once. And let me tell you, when you're trying to serve chow, and one person comes out of their cell and immediately hits another person in the face, and then it starts into a brawl, that's what you're dealing with first thing in the morning, right out of the gate, with 50 to 75 people out at once. So again, you're still responsible for everybody in that housing unit.
Yeah,
I just want to.
understand. No, I understand.
Colonel Bailey, I have a question. Where is Two Bridges in relation to the state cap financially? Because we're, what, $1.3 million over?
Oh, so on our budget wise for the county caps?
Yeah.
So my two counties have not had to really raise their caps in many years. I think Saginaw raised theirs a little bit a few years ago. However, I want to compare apples to apples, is that our facility was designed and built bigger than the need for the two counties and to be able to generate revenue for bed space. So a lot of my budgeting is offset by revenue coming in from other counties.
So you don't have the cap problem that we have?
I don't want to speak for the two counties because I work for the jail authority. The jail authority requests the cap money from the counties, and then the authority tasks me with doing the budget to be approved by the authority.
So if the county's over the cap, the money you bring in, it helps leave it that, and we would be bringing a substantial amount of money to help that if we joined.
Correct. So maybe to better answer your question is that Two Bridges' budget is more than the two counties' cap combined, but the facility was designed to generate revenue. And with this agreement, certainly Knox County would contribute financially. My thought would be to help stabilize all three counties' fiscal, being fiscal responsible for the corrections in their counties.
Okay. And Sheriff Polkey, how much money will we save, do you believe, in making this deal?
That's a tricky question. I don't believe that we ever save anybody money because we're charging them taxes. So what we can do is get to what you're asking. With an agreement with Two Bridges or even any other jail, if they had to come in with a similar number, but with a number that is potentially on the table to negotiate is much more doable being asked to operate on a $5.6 million interim budget. So that's the best I can answer your question. I still have to do the job one way or the other, and to do it as is, I need $7 million.
Question, I guess for both of you. Where does Maine pretrial services fit into if we continue doing what we're doing, or if we go to a holding facility, and what kind of services do you offer down at Two Bridges?
So I can answer for Two Bridges. I do not personally, for Two Bridges, have an agreement with Maine Pretrial. Both counties, Lincoln and Saginaw County, do have an agreement with Maine Pretrial, and each has a Maine Pretrial employee that is at my facility 5 days a week. I have one of my staff members that helps with that process with Maine Pretrial. that as part of this agreement and services that we offer to any individual in my facility, inmates from Knox County would be afforded. But I personally do not have that agreement. And if I might add on the question about savings, is that's always a tough question. I agree with the sheriff, and I think that the hardest time to show savings is when you start something. And moving forward with creating the efficiencies, such as combined contracts or agreements, that's maybe where the bigger savings might be seen down the road.
So for us, we utilize Marine Pretrial Services to do all of our basically bail screening. There are a couple other statutory items that they also help us monitor, such as community confinement packets and so forth. Statutorily, it can either be done by the authority or it can be contracted out. This county chose to contract it out with Maine Pretrial Services. I have been in communication with Maine Pretrial Services and explained our situation, and that we may have to terminate that contract in order to use those funds in order to keep as many staff as possible.
Would we then be providing those services in-house?
Correct. The district attorney and the judiciary have already been consulted with as well, just to ensure that it could be a seamless process, again, preparatory to the pending interim budget.
I have a question for the sheriff. How many people are we talking about transferring to? How many inmates do we have? What's the amount of people we're talking about transferring to Two Bridges? And then what would we be holding in the 72-hour?
So, as my letter to you folks explained, some of this is unknown. We've never done this, so I can't answer some of the probabilities. What we have, if we become a holding facility, we'll have 11 beds as a holding facility, plus the 6-hour section, which can house approximately 10. The average daily that we have as Knox County is approximately 60 to 65. That has been our trend for the last year. That is long-term incarcerated over 72 hours. 72 hours is a weird thing because that's 72 hours of open court time, not necessarily 72 hours in a facility, just so you guys are aware as well. That's why we call it a holding facility, because a person could be held upwards of 8 days, especially around the Thanksgiving holidays. As far as other than that, that's what I can give you. 65 long-term, and we can house up to 11. That data changes. We still can't get a very good picture of that yet. Our in-house record system hasn't been the greatest at digesting that information request. But what it looks like is we do have periods where there's nobody in holding, and then there are periods where holding is completely full.
And one other question. Our partners in law enforcement in the rest of the county, have you spoken to them about it, and what are their feelings?
So I've not had this specific question talked about with them. Really nothing is going to change for them. As a holding facility, that's what we already offer them for service. If anything, we may see an increase in arrests that we take versus being bailed by the local PDs.
Because you'll have more availability.
Correct. There were some statutory changes as well that the judiciary made in order to allow corrections to do PR bails as long as a bail commissioner is consulted. You don't have to have one physically arrive. So that is playing into this too. There's just a lot of changes that have happened, and this situation is in some ways exacerbating some of that.
I just have one thought I want to mention, which we've talked about the need to replace our facility. If we wanted to get it done in 15 years and another 10 years, we would probably have to go out for a bond and, all the time that it takes to get to the point of actually having a new facility. And in current dollars, you're saying that's maybe $75 to $100 million to replace our facility.
Sort of. So it's $100 million is projected in about 15 to 20
It
years.
is, okay, that is projected.
Correct.
Okay, then that sort of negates what I was going to say, that if those are today's dollars, then I think we could
That's the future.
potentially double that, but it sounds like that's already been accounted for. Okay, that's helpful to know.
And I mean, the other piece, as I mentioned, is just the physical plan itself. And we're still waiting on the study from SMRT. Again, this situation has expedited some things without having that full report. Some things have come to us in draft. The physical plan in particular is, we have our regular operating budget, but we need to start planning for an estimated $2 million a year in capital, which also has not been in the budget, which could potentially drive the $7 million budget closer to an $8 or $9 million budget. The boil plants in particular and the kitchen are the two biggest things that are currently on the plate for needing some substantial overhaul.
So in addition to staffing, cost increases and the treatment increases, the physical plan increases are really going to blow the budget in coming years. Is what you're saying.
The $7 million that was asked, there was little to no capital improvement in there because we knew it was going to be a tough budget.
Yeah, and when you defer those capital improvements, they come back to bite you, for sure. Thanks for that.
Other questions?
One more question. We've heard that some staff are already leaving the jail. If we go ahead with this, I would suspect that more people would leave if the opportunity presented itself. Will we have a problem maintaining until we can make the move to Two Bridges?
That is unpredictable, but yes, if we were to see a significant reduction in staffing, I would have to do something. What that would be, I would not know. I'd have to deal with it at the time.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Back to the capital improvements. If we maintain the holding facility, there are capital improvements that we're still going to have to do anyway.
Correct.
So we're still looking at some significant increases in the out years to make those improvements. Is that correct?
Correct. If we maintain it as a 24-hour jail, correct. If we reduce to a holding facility, we may see some. Some of those items still need to be improved. Some things that may not, maybe the kitchen itself, maybe some of the sections of the jail. Again, it's all dependent on what funds are available.
A lot of those decisions become operational decisions, which we leave basically to the administration at that point. We make the decision that we're going to do this, and we allow them to meet the laws the way that they best figure. Then they come back to us with the budget requests, at which point we and the budget committee look it over again and say, "What are you, crazy?" But odds are pretty good that at that point it'll be, if not saving money, at least the increases won't be quite so great.
That's the hope, but similar to hoping that the legislation can help us in 90 days. I mean, like I said, I'm all about hope, but I'm a realist by nature, and a realist anticipates this could be a problem for 2 years. So.
If there's nothing further, we have a motion on the floor, which is an act to allow the county administrator to execute an agreement with Two Bridges Regional Jail. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Three in favor, none opposed. The act carries. The next thing on the agenda would be an act to adjourn. Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, is there any, what's our next meeting schedule looking like? Based on this?
I don't. I think the only one in my head right now is a regular commission meeting in December, although I'm assuming we'll have a special meeting prior to discuss some of what came out of today's meeting.
And hopefully some budget items coming along at some point soon.
Yes.
If nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Any discussion?
Yeah, one discussion. Not happy about the vote I had to just make, but I think it was the right thing to do. And I wish there were another way, but I don't see it, and I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I feel similarly. A hard vote to take, and I felt like it was the way we had to go. And I just want folks to know how hard that was.
If nothing else comes before the commission, I will call the vote. All those in favor of adjournment? 3 in favor, none opposed. Thank you all.